In this video, I want to share one key thing I learned about how the brain works, that when I had MECFS and fibromyalgia, had a dramatic impact on the way I thought about the condition and what could support recovery. And I want to share a very simple but powerful 3-step brain training strategy that I've shared with people who have found it to be a game changer. So the light bulb moment was really starting to understand neuroplasticity, and I learned 3 things about how the brain works that I'm going to share now. So the first was neuroplasticity. The brain has the ability to grow and change with use. Scientists used to think that the adult brain didn't change. We now know that every time you use it, the brain builds new connections. It's making thousands of connections every second, and you can influence some of those connections. The neurons, the wiring in your brain, get thicker and stronger the more we use them. And this means that our responses get faster. I'll explain what that means in a moment. So this is neuroplasticity in action. There are many studies that demonstrate this. Even though there was research that showed that the brain changed with use that go back over 100 years. So Eleanor Maguire of University College London carried out an important bit of research in the early 2000s. She studied the brains of London's famous black cab drivers to look at the effect that learning these routes in London had on their brains. So they have to memorise 25,000 streets and significant landmarks, and they have to be able to describe the route between any 2 streets. And I've tested my friend on this, who's a black cab driver. So it's incredible, isn't it, that they can memorise 25,000 streets. What she found was that part of the brain, the hippocampus, that is responsible for memory and spatial awareness, was larger and more highly developed compared to the general public. So this brings me on to the second point. Repetition wires and rewires the brain. The implication of this research is that whatever you practice, you get good at. So for example, if I'm learning to play an instrument, I'm learning the piano at the moment, I'll get better at it. Initially, I have to think about where I put my fingers to play the chord of C, for example, but after a while, it just becomes automatic. Now, what that means is we can get good at things that are useful, but we can also get good at things that are not useful. So, for example, if I practice worrying, stressing, chastising myself, catastrophizing, for instance, if I overdid it when I had MECFS and was experiencing strong symptoms or sensations, as I call them, then I'll get better at that. And I use the word sensations as I feel it's less emotive than the word symptom. And when I encourage clients to use that word, many of them say, actually, I notice it just feels gentler, less alarming to use that word. Okay? So stressing about symptoms or sensations was something I practiced a lot when I had MECFS. And I was already a bit of a worrier even before I developed the condition. As I've mentioned previously, activating the stress response makes it more difficult for our bodies to heal. I talk more about the impact of stress in another video that I released recently. I'll pop the link below because that video really explained to me, or what I share in that video really explained to me why I wasn't getting well and how stress was affecting my healing and recovery. So the third thing I learned is that our responses become conditioned. So if I'm learning to play the piano, as I say, initially I have to think about where I put my fingers at first. But as I practice, the connections in the brain get stronger and therefore faster. And so learning to play chords becomes an automatic and subconscious skill that I don't have to think about. So as I've played the guitar on and off from about the age of 18, I really don't have to think about where I put my fingers to play a whole range of chords. Okay, so the brain does this because it is always looking for ways to save energy. So it automates certain things that we do over and over again. This applies to useful things, as I say, like learning chords, but it also applies to our emotions, thoughts, behaviours, habits. And these might be useful or limiting. So as I say, if I keep responding to symptoms with stress and anxiety, then that response becomes conditioned. So for example, if I keep responding to symptoms with stress and anxiety, then that response becomes conditioned. My brain would automatically and subconsciously associate symptoms with stress. So it became easier to generate stress. I'd notice a symptom and my default response would be to start stressing about it. Now, sometimes I was aware that I was generating stress, but I didn't know how to change it. But also there were times when I was generating subconscious responses. So I was generating stress without realizing it. So you may be asking yourself the question, well, how do I change a response if I'm not even aware of it? What I discovered is that I could learn to spot the subconscious stresses, process the stress responses, and create new responses. For now, I'll focus on what I learned about being able to uncover subconscious responses. So this 3-part strategy is the first step in a bigger process, and it's really essential to lay down these foundations. So I invite you to practice this 3-step strategy that I'm about to share. So let's get into what this 3-step brain training strategy is. So I invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And the first step is to connect. So I invite you to connect to that part of you that is wise. Consider that you've responded to challenging situations many times in your life. Maybe you were faced with a challenging situation, or a friend or family member was, and you just stepped up. You responded in a resourceful way. I invite you to remind yourself that you do this and have done this. And when you've connected to that part of you that has the capacity for patience, peacefulness, playfulness, pragmatism, and presence, acceptance, calm, compassion, and trust, you can gently become aware of sensations, symptoms, emotions, both those that are uncomfortable and uncomfortable. And we're bringing the quality of the observer, just like a scientist in a laboratory, noticing without judgment. When you practice this, you're training yourself to become more aware of sensations, symptoms, and emotions. And often these are subconscious. So for example, if you just pause right now and tune into your body, just noticing a part of your body that right now you're aware of some sensation. It may be the case that there were times when you weren't aware of that sensation or similar sensations. And just bringing our awareness to it is helping us to become more conscious of what's going on. So for example, this morning I noticed quite a lot of tension in my upper spine near my neck, and just by tuning into it and getting curious, it softened. And I realised that there was some message I was telling myself. I was generating some frustration about something. When I was more aware of that, I was able to just let it go. Now, obviously, if it feels uncomfortable to notice sensations, emotions, symptoms, then just pause doing that and just use any strategies that you find useful already. So that's the first step, to connect. The second step is just to notice. So we're starting to just notice those sensations without interpreting, analysing, getting into our head and creating stories, generating worry, catastrophizing. We're not doing those things, we're just noticing the sensations. And if you notice that you do start getting into your head, then we want to be curious about that. One of the things I learned is that my nervous system was my early warning system. It's a very finely attuned system. Sometimes people get frustrated that they're generating responses and getting triggered, but actually the body, your nervous system, is providing you with really important information. And when we learn to get curious about it rather than judge, then we can move into that space of being the observer. Your nervous system, for example, knows when something feels good and when something doesn't feel good, even before your conscious mind knows. So as I say, if something doesn't feel good, we can just get curious, name the emotions, the sensations and symptoms. And this can help you make sense of your experience. So for example, if I noticed that part of me was feeling scared, anxious, I'd make space for that part of me, just as I would a child. I'd let them speak, I'd listen, and I'd let that part know that I've heard it and that I am here for them. Now, if the child, that inner wounded part of us, isn't used to us making space for it, it might be a little bit untrusting to begin with, but the more that we show up in that way, the more we can build that connection. And the more that part of us feels heard and acknowledged, then that can help soothe that part of us. When I've taken clients through a process of which this is part, they often say when they go through these steps, I feel more relaxed. I feel more energized. So this can help us build our window of tolerance for those emotions, sensations that we previously found too uncomfortable to tolerate. So in the past, I found it very challenging to be with uncomfortable emotions or even sensations or symptoms. And so I would want to distract myself. But by practicing this, I have built my window of tolerance so that I have got more capacity to deal with the discomfort without wanting to distract myself by eating chocolate or whatever it is that, you do. This is what can happen. So as we do that, it builds our window of tolerance. And so I'm now more able to sit with discomfort, whether that discomfort is emotional discomfort, discomfort in terms of sensation, symptoms. Step 3 is to cultivate safety. We can do this by saying to ourselves, even though I'm experiencing these emotions or sensations, right now I am safe. This will pass. I may be remembering past experiences of when I experienced these symptoms or sensations or emotions. But I recognise that they were in the past. This version of me in this present moment has more resources and tools at my disposal. And so I can navigate this with more ease. Or you might say, I am learning to navigate this with more ease. Responding in this way just helped settle my nervous system by just reminding myself that in this present moment I was safe, even though this current experience might be triggering some past memories. And this just helps create more space to respond differently going forward. So they're the 3 steps: connect, notice, safety, C.N.S. Okay? So I invite you to practice those steps as long as it feels okay for you to do so. As I say, if it doesn't feel okay, then you can skip any steps that don't resonate with you right now. If you want to watch the video where I talk about the light bulb moments I had around understanding stress and how it impacted and explained my symptoms, I'll pop the link below. In the next video, I will share the second light bulb moment I had about the brain and the way the brain works. So look out for that video. Do subscribe, hit the notification button. You'll be notified when I release that video. If you want more tips, you're welcome to join my Facebook group, where I post a lot of content. You are most welcome to join the Resilience Group Coaching. This happens twice a month. There's no charge. You are welcome to make a donation. If you'd like to know more about that, put the word coach below. If you'd like to explore working more closely with me, then I am going to be running a 12-week group course called the Mind-Body Reconnect. Up until now, this has only been available one-to-one, but I've talked to Claire Caldwell, the founder of this approach, and she's agreed that I could do a pilot. So if you'd like to know more about that, so that you would be working alongside other people, comment the word course below and I'll send you details. We'll be starting towards the end of June. If you've got any questions, or if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover, let me know. If I've got something sensible to say about it, I will. Dare to dream big dreams. Keep going. You've got this. Wishing you great health. Bye for now.